Blog Talk Radio.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ghost here with another episode of True Conservative Republican Radio. And once again, I am the host, the man they call Ghost, and I thank you for joining me this evening. Today, we have a real touchy issue that I wanted to talk about. I stated I wanted to talk about it last week. It's about the war on drugs. And everybody has pretty touchy situations or little issues when it comes to that nature. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we start talking about the war on drugs, I just wanted to make a comment about simple observations that I've had here. It's come to my concern that I've been patronizing, blogs and other supposed conservative Republican shows on Blog Talk Radio here. And I have to say, I'm really disappointed. I'm starting to actually believe that the conservative movement is just I think it's non-existent in this today's Republican Party. It was John McCain's little primary election here in South Carolina that's kind of disturbed me. Here's a southern state. It's supposed to be traditionally, how can I put it, conservative. But now we've got social liberals dominating supposed conservative Republican states. So, and I decided to go on these little conservative talk shows. You got a lot of them on Blog Talk Radio here. And I've tried to pose the question, why is the Republican Party basically submitting to social liberals, And basically every time I pose that question to a conservative or a supposed conservative host here on Blog Talk Radio, they don't even want to acknowledge it. They don't even want to acknowledge the fact that social liberalism is dominating the Republican Party. And that's disgusting. And I've been on all the supposed conservative radio hosts on here, and as a matter of fact, these people, and you know who you are, all right? You listen to my show, you know who you are. If you're calling yourself a conservative and you're not acknowledging the social liberalism that is blatant and running rampant and has hijacked the Republican Party, you need to stop calling yourself conservative. And that's the bottom line. Take conservative out of your name because you're not conservative. If you're going to embrace social liberalism, if you're not going to acknowledge the fact that social liberals have hijacked the Republican Party, then take the conservative out of your name. And you know who you are, too. I came off of a show here about, 2 hours ago. And another thing I don't like, okay? Another thing that's really disgusting me is these little cliques of bloggers out here. You know what I'm saying? Little blogger cliques. When I tried to facilitate debate and ask them, supposed conservatives, why is it that we're not acknowledging the fact that the Republican Party has been hijacked by social liberals? Well, why is that? And hey, you know what? They just completely ignore me like I wasn't even there. Here I am, a conservative Republican, and why are these people not acknowledging social liberalism that hijacked our party? These stupid little these blogger cliques, I'm sick of them, You notice you don't hear me on here saying, you go to my blog, because it's ridiculous. Who the hell are you? The only people that read your blogs are the idiots that you hang around. If you're not going to acknowledge the fact that and when I say we, I mean the Republican Party, is suffering a social conservative backlash. They're just completely isolating anybody who is acknowledging themselves as a social conservative. So I'm tempted to do something. The name of this show is called True Conservative Republican Radio. But the way the primaries are going, I'm thinking about taking Republican off of my damn name. I'm serious about this, folks. What happened to our party? We're getting hijacked by a bunch of social liberals that embrace baby killing. They embrace the feminist movement. They embrace, multiple, triple, quadruple divorces. They embrace women shitting out about 5 or 6 kids and having 5 or 6 different fathers to do it. They're embracing this activity. They're just embracing this activity. I'm thinking about completely disbanding myself from the Republican Party because they have isolated social conservatives. You know, they got Duncan Hunter, who's a true conservative Republican out here. He's being shut out by his own party. By social liberals. This is what's going on here, folks. And look, I know we're going to talk about the war on drugs, but we're going to talk about it here in a minute. I'm just sick to my stomach. I have literally patronized every conservative blog talk radio show that claims to be conservative. And none of them want to acknowledge that this social liberal phenomenon has hijacked the Republican Party. You know, I was on some show, forgot what it was called, some guy named Moran or something. I forgot his name. Thank God, because he was trying to claim he's a conservative. And he had all the social blogger cliques. You know, he had that ridiculous imbecile Ed Morrissey, who's claiming he's a conservative, a couple of broads that think they're conservative. And I was trying to pose many questions to him. You know, they're too busy saying, oh, yeah, well, I'm staying at this hotel. I'm blogging over here. Hey, look at me now. I'm with this campaign. Hey, look at me. I'm so cool. And they didn't want to acknowledge the fact that the Republican Party has been hijacked by a bunch of social liberals. They were just ignoring me. They were ignoring me. I'm as conservative gets, and they're ignoring me. Well, you know what? I tell you what, if this is the way the Republican Party is, all the conservative people, and there's a lot of you, and I thank all of you for listening. I thank all of you for listening. But if we're gonna nominate a social conservative, or excuse me, if we're gonna nominate a social liberal, I'm just gonna suggest to you, if you're a true conservative, don't vote. Don't vote. What's your choices? A liberal and a liberal? That's your choices now. You got John McCain, the projected winner of South Carolina, and if South Carolina can fall for this garbage, our party's in trouble. I think that the conservative movement needs to branch off and go into its own party. Its own party. We need to stop this embracing of social liberalism. It just can't. It can't be tolerated. It can't be tolerated. Social conservatism was the root of the Republican Party. Do you remember that? And now you got these people embracing it. I mean, look at Rudy Giuliani, for Christ's sake. He did his cousin. I mean, he's got like 4 divorces. He treated his last wife like a complete dish rag whore, messing around on her. It's ridiculous, man. Anyway, if you're a conservative Republican and you're a true conservative, don't vote for any of these people. I spit on everybody out here who's going to embrace this social liberalism. I spit on them. You piece of crap. And you know what I'm going to do? For all you people that are out there, I'm going to take the Republican out of the name of this show. Because Republicans they've lost me. I mean, they're going to embrace social liberalism. They've lost me. So this is what I'm going to do to the Republican name right here. Everybody listening? Listen to this. This is what I think of the Republican Party right now. That's exactly what I think is going on. We're getting flushed out the toilet. And that's what I'm doing to the Republican Party. I'm flushing it like a bad colon cleanse. Anyway, now that I've got that off my chest. Anyway, let's go on to the subject at hand. We're going to be talking about the war on drugs here, because I'm sick and tired of this primary talk. As a matter of fact, that's it about me and the primaries. You'll never hear me talk about these ridiculous pieces of garbage, because both sides are liberal. No matter what way you look at it, they're both social liberals. So I'm not pulling for anybody. You know, the Republican Party can literally shut out Duncan Hunter, a true conservative Republican, and allow some lunatic, old windbag, prostate-infected piece of trash like Ron Paul to get up on the Republican platform, spew off his long-hair liberal hippie propaganda, and allow him to raise funds under the Republican cloak, and yet they can shut out a true conservative Republican like Duncan Hunter. So if that's how the Republican Party wants it, we'll tell you what, sir, and tell you what to all those people in the Republican Party, you lost the conservative movement. And if you're a conservative, don't vote for any of these people. Anyway, I'm getting a little upset here. Let me tell you, it's upsetting. And thanks for all the folks in the chat room. It's upsetting. I've been listening to these people, these stupid blogger cliques, and all these imbeciles, and they don't want to acknowledge it because to be honest with you, I think these people are liberals, all of them. You know, these people that are supposedly the front runners of supposed republicanism out here, like, I hate to keep calling his name out, but you can't deny that this idiot has just dominated the conservative little radio shows in BTR, Ed Morrissey. This is what I'm talking about. This man, I think, is a closet liberal. I think he's a closet liberal, and it's people like him that have ruined our party, so you know what? I'm flushing my party down the toilet. It's the conservative movement. Long live the conservative movement, my friends. Excuse me, I'm sorry, just a little angry, you know, I'm just a little angry here. My party's left me, you gotta give me a little bit of slack. Anyway, we're going to talk about the war on drugs here. The war on drugs, how do you feel about it? Give me a call, 646-652-4869. The war on drugs, I think it's just a logical fallacy, first of all. I mean, of course, I don't like people doing drugs. As a matter of fact, I hate drug dealers. As a matter of fact, I don't cry when a drug dealer gets killed. As a matter of fact, I have a party. I mean, these drug pushers need to all be assassinated as far as I'm concerned. You know, it just needs to be assassinated, all these drug pushers. Okay? But you see, as much of a supposed war that we've waged against these substances and narcotics, it seems to me that it's not making any kind of a dent. As a matter of fact, it's getting worse. I read recently that 80% of the people in prison are in prison. I think it's over 80% as a matter of fact, but I'm just going to be a little conservative about it. 80% of prisoners are in prison for drug offenses. For drug-related offenses. And you see, this is concerning me here because, I mean, I thought the war on drugs was supposed to deter people. It was supposed to stop people from not only using drugs, but selling it. And it's done completely opposite of that. I mean, when you got a prison system filled with 80% of people in prison are in prison because of drug-related offenses. Now, I'm going to have to break away from a lot of my conservative constituency that watch this or listen to this program. I'm going to have to say that I don't think the war on drugs is working. On the contrary, I think it's perpetuating drug use. And I think, in my personal opinion, and I'd like for you to call up if you have an opinion, 646-652-4869 is the number to call. I think we need to legalize drugs. That's right. I think we need to legalize all of them. I don't care what it is. We need to legalize it all. And people are going to be like, what? Wait a minute, Ghost, you're supposed to be conservative. You're supposed to be on, be on the side of the war on drugs. Well, no. You see, it's not making a difference, this war on drugs. All right? This war on drugs, it's not doing anything for anybody. People are still doing drugs. They're still smoking crack. They're still snorting cocaine. They're still smoking pot. They're still doing all kinds of garbage. And I think that we need to just legalize all the drugs. Just legalize them all. Now, let me explain how to legalize it. First of all, I think the government should get involved because the government has a responsibility to keeping its people safe, okay? I think that the government should contract some of these people, like in the tobacco industry and maybe in the pharmaceutical industry, to manufacture and cultivate this stuff. You know? I mean, let them cultivate it, and let's build a bureaucratic system. And I know I'm against bureaucracy, believe me, but this is, this is drug-related, so that this is different. I think that we need to dispense these drugs at locations in high, dense metropolises, okay? And let the government dish it out, cultivate it, and distribute it. So anybody who wants some narcotics, anybody who wants to just have drugs and, snort cocaine all day, shoot heroin, whatever it is that they want to do, they can go to these locations that are government-funded, government-regulated, government-overseen. Go in there and buy it. First of all, not only would it bring the price of the drug down, but it'll take out these ridiculous dope pushers, these drug dealers. They're going to go out of business. People like Pablo Escobar are going to be extinct because you know that the United States consumes 85% of the world's drugs. Now, why is that? Because there's a humongous profit margin by infiltrating drugs into our country so they can sell them at a high profit. And if you legalize it, and if you dispense it through government bureaucracy, and at the same time, you can collect taxes on their vices. Because people are going to do it anyway. I mean, who do you want to have the money? You want some dope dealer who's just basically going to splurge on all kinds of materialistic garbage, not pay any taxes, and at the same time continue to grow his drug empire? Or do you want the government to collect the money so we can pay for other such programs, social programs, and that sort of thing? That's what we need to do. I mean, if we don't do anything about this problem, all we're going to do is see more and more people get rich. And when I mean rich, I'm talking about these dope pushers. You're going to get people in South America, these drug cartels, even more and more influential. And I think something needs to be done about it. Give me a call right now if you do not think this is the right way to go. If you have another alternative, let me know. 646-652-4869. Right now, we're going to take our first call here. 312 area code. You are on the air.
Okay, Ghost. How you doing? This is the Poor People Campaign Inc. in Chicago.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
It's good to hear from you this evening.
I beg to differ with you, sir.
Okay.
Because it's a horrible thing already, the way the government has already been confessing our community with drugs and heroin and dope and crack and cocaine. Yeah, they got the drug dealers out here. Yeah, they got 95 or 85% people locked up that's in there for drug convicted crimes and everything. But still in all, the community, the peoples in the community have suffered. Families have suffered from these doggone drugs. Man, I mean, once you get to messing with the heroin, it gets in your bones. You can't even leave it alone, even if you try. And then if you do get to the point where you can get some medicine and stuff to leave it alone, eventually it still ends up killing you.
Well, I understand that, believe me.
And the government is not going to let you stop them from bringing drugs over here. They don't want the price of drugs to go down. They don't want that. They want to continue to make their billions and billions of dollars.
Well, how is the government making billions of dollars? You talking about the law enforcement and the prison systems?
No, I'm talking about the government. The army forces that's bringing that stuff over here on our military vessels, like our planes, our military boats and everything. They bring that stuff over here. That stuff just don't fly over here by itself. Now,
okay.
You got to see where it's coming from. It don't just come over here by itself. They got peoples that they help bring that stuff over here, and then they got people that meet them and start distributing the stuff out in the community. Yeah, buddy boy, that's what they've been doing ever since. Matter of fact, drugs paid for a war. It paid for a war back in, what, the 60s or the 70s?
Are you talking about the Nicaraguan situation?
It paid for a war.
Yeah.
They used drugs to pay for the war.
Yeah, and believe me, I'm disgusted when I hear that about the Nicaraguan situation, about General Blandón basically pushing in drugs into the communities out here for, some sort of a military junta to come back.
Though, brother. That was in every state. That was in every state. They flooded the communities with drugs. And then I knew a guy, he had came home from the war. And he was sitting up here shooting himself in the arm with dope. And I said, he dead now. I said, Pete, I'm about 12 or 11 years old. I said, Pete, how in the world did you get hooked on drugs? He said, well, I was over there in the war. Then he said they sprayed up with that damn Agent Orange. Then he said, that's where they had the drugs at, Jerry. I said, where? He said, on the Army bases. He said, we had tons of that stuff.
What exactly? Heroin?
Heroin, cocaine, weed, all of it. He said they had tons of it. He started using the drugs over there in the war. And when they came home from the war, a lot of them went in not being drug addicts, and thousands of them came home dope fiends.
Okay, well, look, I can acknowledge that, like I acknowledge the General Blandón situation about them pushing narcotics in the communities out here to raise for some kind of revolutionary army for General Blandón to go back to Nicaragua and take over his country. But we're talking about the present situation right now. You've got a lot of people in jail for drug-related offenses. And that's the main population of our prison system. Now, don't you think we should have more room for people like killers and child molesters and people that just are really just vile people of society? And I'm posing a question for you.
Right.
Don't you think if we legalize the drugs, just like I was stating, have the government take control of it and have them cultivate it, have them dispense it at locations in high-dense metropolises, so people can go in and basically go and buy their drugs at a cheaper rate than what the drug dealers are pushing out here? That'll completely eliminate not only the drug dealer, not only the drug smuggler, but the drug cartels in South America and in Mexico. It'll eliminate these people, and at the same time, we'll be able to keep track as a government. We'll be able to keep track on who's using, when was the last time they used, how much they used. An employer, instead of having to resort to drug testing, because there's a whole black market behind the drug testing system too, all an employer has to do is just look up on a database, and we can charge for that, $10 in access to the database, and we could generate some serious taxes off of this, and at the same time, eliminating the drug dealer altogether, and eliminating the drug pusher, eliminating the drug smuggler, and eliminating the drug lords out there in South America. Don't you agree?
Well, Ghost, you got a great point there, but our government would never, ever do that.
Why do you think they'll never do it?
Because they need to blame somebody. They would never, ever do that. They don't want to be sitting up there getting no big, opening up a big place to sell cocaine and heroin and weed, where you go in there and you buy you a $5 bag of weed.
Well, don't you think it's because of the fact that the government has basically, put this supposed war on drugs and demonized it so much that it's got the people scared? I mean, just even approaching the notion of legalizing these narcotics, it's got them scared that possibly, their child is going to do it. But, what these people don't understand is that these kids are subjected to drugs in public schools. I mean, they're subjected to this by their peers and that sort of thing. Don't you think if we legally dispensed everything at a cheaper rate, obviously taking out the drug dealer, and we'll be able to keep track of people that are actually using, what they're using, and how much they're using, don't you think that would be a little bit better? And not only that, the taxes generated from all this consortium of bureaucracy based on dispensing drugs through government, we'll be able to pay for programs for people that actually want to get off the drugs. educating the children about what these narcotics are, why they're regulated, why you have to go to a certain location to get it, and if you get it, you possibly won't get a job because, you know, your employer is going to look up into this database, and if your name's on it, they're going to find out what narcotic you got, when was the last time you got it, and how much you got of it. And this way, it'll give the employer the option, well, you know, this person did get cocaine, but he got it about 2 years ago. Let me talk to him about it. And if they say, well, yeah, I used to use, but I don't use anymore, I mean, it gives the employer options and that sort of thing. Anybody could be doing cocaine right now, and we won't even know it. People that are, you know, who knows who's doing it? People that are flying airplanes, people that are driving buses. I mean, cocaine is a hard drug to trace.
Well,
so, I mean, go ahead.
Well, goes, if anybody is using cocaine and they use it for a good 2 weeks to a month, believe you me, and they smoking crack, believe you me, you will tell.
Well, smoking, yeah, I understand about freebase.
You will tell, because they're going to do anything to get it. I mean, I have seen some beautiful sisters get out there on that stuff, man, and it destroyed them. They have destroyed them. And they look like, man, but the government is not, that's a great idea what you're talking, where we can be able to track and find out who's using it and keep it in, you know, they're not going to do that because, for one, the military will have to be exposed, the government will have to be exposed.
So what you're saying is you're actually insinuating that the government is using the military to bring off large sums of drugs.
Yeah, that's
are you making reference to the Frank Lucas situation?
No, what Frank Lucas situation was, it was grimming, it was very touching, but it was a true story.
No, I believe me. I knew about Frank Lucas before they even made a movie about it.
Yeah, it was a true story.
Are you referring to that, or are you referring to some other situation where
they make more money that way? Like people like Frank Lucas out there in the front being the patsy, while the government figures and the generals and stuff in the back, you never see them. They make more money that way. They put their kids through college. They're living in beautiful homes. They're not worried about the small people that's getting hooked on it. Like I said, when the shit hit the fan, they don't care who it hit, whether what color you are. They don't care. All they want is their money.
Well, don't you think
biggest drug dealers on earth, our own government?
Well, don't you think that by me posing the option of possibly legalizing drugs and putting it in a scenario where, hey, look, we're not talking about drugs being legal by going down the street to a corner store and you being able to get a vial of cocaine. That's not what I'm talking about. But don't you think that if we pose this option to the government and enough people, remember, we live in a democracy, and in a democracy, all we have to do as the people is to convince more people that this is the right thing to do. And once enough people start making noise...
was a general, and she was trying to legalize drugs, and she was a general. She was a short lady, wore glasses. She was black. I forgot her name, but she was a general. And then later on down the line, come to find out she was trying to legalize drugs, but come to find out her son was a big drug dealer. So,
yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, I hate the drug dealer more than I hate the drug user. I mean, the drug user...
Oh, yeah, the drug user is just somebody that's weak and then fell down in luck and got hooked on that stuff. Because believe me, Ghost, if you ever been on drugs, you would know it's not a pretty sight.
I've never been on drugs, but I've seen people.
And I'm telling you right now, it's not a pretty sight. I have used crack, and I have chewed cocaine, and it's not a pretty sight to see people going down, to watch your family members die right in front of your face. It's not a pretty sight.
I am sorry to hear that.
It's not pretty.
I really am sorry to hear that, but I'd like to ask you a personal question. Do you remember, and I know this is personal, if you don't want to talk about it, I completely understand, but do you remember the first time somebody offered you some narcotics?
Oh, boy, I remember because I was young. I was about 18 years old.
Now, was it a drug dealer?
No, it was just something that we was doing out there for fun. I thought just, hanging out with the crowd was going to make things, was going to fit me in with the crowd. So
was that in school, sir?
Back in the 80s. Yeah, it was back in the 80s. Everybody was shooting cocaine, so...
Was that in your public school?
No, yeah, wait a minute now. You're going too fast here. It wasn't in the public, but some kids in public school was using drugs.
No, so you said you were a teenager in the 80s.
Yeah, I was a teenager. I was about 18 years old, but I was hanging out in the streets with older people. So I was trying to fit in. So that's when I started using it. But still in all, it took me a whole year to get myself together. I went from tooting cocaine to smoking rocks. And I had looked up, boy, I had got so thin, you could see my heart beating through my chest.
Wow. Well, you know what? Congratulations on your sobriety. I understand that. And believe me, I have compassion for people that utilize drugs because, these are just disenchanted people. I mean, they don't know any better. I mean, the way our system is, all right, the way we are constructed, the war on drugs is perpetuating this activity because they're demonizing really drugs that, I'm talking about one specific drug, marijuana. They're demonizing marijuana to the point where I remember in the 80s they were talking about people ODing on commercials from marijuana. Do you remember this? Do you remember there was a commercial about the war on drugs, and they showed a guy on the floor, kind of just dead or supposedly dead. He was limp, he was slumped. And, ambulances came in, and they were asking the kid that was still, I guess, alive, what happened. And the kid goes, well, we just tried a little bit of pot, and this is what happened. And they demonized marijuana so much to the point, and this is my theory, that once a child or teenager or whoever is exposed to marijuana and they smoke it or eat it or whatever they do for the first time, all of a sudden they realize that they're not OD'd yet. It's not that dangerous of a drug, and then they relay that same non-danger factor to hard narcotics like cocaine.
Much stronger.
Exactly.
We do. Weed leads you from. I used to smoke weed. They used to have back in the day when I was back in the 80s. They used to have weed called Black Gunyon and Blondie, and man, you was really on to something if you got a hold of some Black Gunyon or some Blondie. And boy. And then one guy I know that he used to take his stuff and lace it with leaf. Put some leaf in his weed, and it would make you do weird. You would see weird shit, And I went. That when I was about 16 years old. I went from that, and when I got 18, I started, looking at the cocaine. Then you toot that shit, and it freezes you up, make you numb.
Now, when you decided to take a toot of cocaine, was it because you thought it wasn't that dangerous since you had tried marijuana?
Yeah, I did. I thought that I could really, have no problem with beating it.
Now, you see, don't you think it was because of the fact that they were demonizing marijuana to the point where, they put it in the same category as these hard narcotics, and that's why it's becoming the gateway drug? Because once a child or a teenager or whoever smokes marijuana and realizes, wait a minute, all I'm doing is, having side effects, which are, you know what the side effects are. You get hungry, everybody's laughing. It's a little bit of a cordial type of thing. But then they relay that same feeling of safety with marijuana, which was always demonized to them as some sort of hard narcotic. They relay that to cocaine or heroin or whatever drug that they're exposed to.
Back in the 80s, they used to show you a picture on TV and saying, this is your brain on crack, and crack an egg and put it in a frying pan. And
actually, they referenced that to marijuana. It wasn't about crack. They would just say, this is your brain on drugs.
Crack too. It was about crack. I know here in Chicago, I used to play it all the time.
I mean, but
brain on crack and put it on and say, bam, and then they would fry the egg. This is your brain on crack.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Don't you agree that if we legalize these narcotics...
I agree, but you got to understand, thousands of people have asked the government to legalize drugs, but they're not going to do it because it cuts their money.
Well, whose money? You're talking about the law enforcement or prison systems?
The government.
Who in the government is making money off the drugs?
Whoever is in power of the military, they know what the military is doing, Ghost. Don't think why you keep on second guessing and going back over the same question? Now, I told you before that the government and the military is involved with bringing these doggone drugs over here to America. This stuff do not fly over here by itself. Okay,
but don't you think that has a lot to do with the drug cartels that are pushing it through?
Well, our government don't have to accept it.
Well, I mean, they're they're pretty crafty, though, sir. I mean, you got to admit, these cartels, as a matter of fact, I mean, I've seen all kinds of ways.
All they do is pay it off. All they do is pay it off. All they do on TV is show us, okay, we didn't stop, we didn't busted a cocaine worth $30 million on coming in here in some baby powder things. We didn't stop that. But they didn't let another one come in that's worth $60 million. So they just be showing us what the media shows us what they want us to see. But in the end, all you can do is tell by looking at the community. We got more drugs in our community now than ever.
And don't you agree that that has something to do with it being illegal?
Yeah, well, no, I keep telling you, if you keep on bringing up the same thing, the government ain't gonna never make it legal.
Because that's the subject matter of the show, sir. We're trying to pose the fact.
Never make it legal, Ghost.
Well, we have to facilitate debate. We got to change people's minds, sir. We got to let them know that look, this war on drugs is a farce. It's not working. It's putting more people in jail.
It did work. That's what it was. It was a farce from the beginning. That we got more drugs out there now, and man, you got kids out there 11, 12 and up is hooked on this stuff.
Exactly, and I think that the reason of that is because they've demonized it to the point where this comes back to the marijuana issue. They've demonized all these narcotics and bundled in marijuana with it, and then once a child who's still not fully developed in their cognitive reasoning, they get some marijuana, they smoke it, and once they smoke it, they realize they're not dead yet, they're not ODing, so they smoke it again, and then they try to relay that same safety factor into cocaine and other hard narcotics. I mean, this is my point. I mean, if somehow the government was able to regulate it, cultivate it, and distribute it.
They know how, but they don't want to. The government can do anything they want. They the government. They can do anything they want. The military can do anything they want. They got the means. They got the financial money. They got it all right there before them. If they really wanted to stop the war, stop all this here drugs from coming in America, they could have been did it a long time ago. But this is what happened. They flooded the black communities in the 60s with it. They didn't care. They didn't care about it at all. And then when it got out of hand, they didn't care because they seen all the money that they was making off of it. So they didn't care when the shit hit the fan, who it hit. They didn't care. And it's the same way now. Yeah, we need to legalize the government, going over there, stopping them from taking all the drugs and bringing it over here. We got our own CIA people that goes and get the drugs and bring them over here, too. They work along with the military. This is deeper than you think.
No, I understand, sir. And you know what? I appreciate your insight. I'm sure you're giving a lot of people an inside view of what narcotics can do to people, and I really appreciate your call.
No, you giving an inside view of what the government wants to do to people, and they're not going to never let you legalize drugs.
Well, we're just trying to facilitate debate on the subject, and once we facilitate debate on the subject, more people are going to come along and possibly suggest it to their congressman or their politician. Anyway, we're going to take another call. We got we've got two 718 numbers. I'm going to pull the first one off. 718.
Hello.
Hello. How you doing? You're on the Go Show. How's it going? What are you, high now? Get off the damn screen. Get out of here. You see, this is what I'm talking about, folks. You got people out here probably snorting cocaine off of their well, never mind. But the point of the show, and the gentleman that was on here before, he was just saying that there's no way that the government will make it legal. And I think that the reason that the government will not make drugs legal is because it's just too profitable. It's too profitable for law enforcement. It's profitable for the prison industries. And this war on drug is a farce. It's an absolute farce. And like I've suggested before, we have a packed chat room here, and I see that we've got some new listeners. I was suggesting earlier, now, once I posed the legalization of all drugs, everybody's like, whoa, wait a minute, Ghost, what are you talking about? You mean to tell me somebody can go to the corner store and get themselves a vial of crack, some lines of coke? No, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is we need to get the government involved. We need to put little, I guess, dispense locations in dense metropolis areas that's run by the government, have the government cultivate it, distribute it. Not only would it bring the price of drugs down so low, it'll take out the drug dealer. It'll take out the drug pusher. It'll take out the drug smuggler. It'll take out the cartels that are out there making billions. Did you know that Pablo Escobar, one of the biggest drug lords in America, world history, I mean, this man was a billionaire. I mean, the military literally had to send in missiles to find the guy to kill him. And how did he become a billionaire? Well, because 85% of the world's drugs is consumed by America. And we have such an illegal, I guess, guise behind it, it's driving the price through the roof. And I know that there's conservatives in here that can't believe I'm saying to legalize drugs, but let's face it, the war on drugs has failed. It's a failure. 80% of the people in prison are drug offenders. I mean, we're basically jailing our own people for doing self-indulgent activities. Anyway, give me a call, 646-652-4869. We're talking about the war on drugs and its effect, and we're going to go ahead and take another call here. 347 area code, you're on the air.
Hey, what's up?
How you doing?
This is a serious subject. Drugs, man. You know, the government has to do a better job at getting these illegal Mexicans stop smuggling the drugs into the country, and, you know, it's a tough subject to talk about.
Well, I think it goes beyond Mexicans as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Mexicans have a lot to do with. Oh, it's South Americans, it's the Jamaicans. I mean, it's everywhere drugs can be cultivated.
Africans.
Absolutely, and you see what we're doing by making
Panama.
by making it so illegal, we're upping the
India.
price. We're upping the price. I mean, don't you agree?
I totally agree, but you know, I love getting high all the time. I love getting stoned. I get stoned all day, baby. Hallelujah, holla back.
Exactly.
I love getting high.
Yeah, you know what? You're one of these people.
I love getting high. I get high as a cat.
I mean, do you see what I'm talking about, folks? That's a liberal agitator if I've ever heard one. And that's our teenage youth right there. Did you hear that? That's our teenage youth. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to the conservative values and stuff that I was, touting in previous shows. This is our youth. This is public education. That moron you heard on there, that I bet you money that there's no fatherly influence in that household. I mean, the kid sounded like he just popped out of the ass crack of Richard Simmons, and that just goes to show you the feminized vernacular. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, that's another subject matter. We're talking about a serious subject, and this subject is the war on drugs. Is it working? What should we do? That sort of thing. 516 area code, you're on the air.
Yes, Ghost. How are you? Good evening.
How are you doing today, sir?
Yeah, good. You have a good show.
Thank you very much.
I want to talk about the war on drugs, but I do want to. You hit a key point there, the feminization of liberals. You notice these young kids that they've been deballed, and I'll say
absolutely.
Saturday night.
I've stated that on previous shows, and let me tell you, I get hate mail all day long because of it.
Yeah, you hear these guys. Come on the Blog Talk Radio. They have they're totally feminized. They have absolutely no masculine. They just have no viewpoint that's a masculine viewpoint. It's a totally feminized viewpoint.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to see a feminized viewpoint from females, not from men.
Exactly.
or supposed men. And like that guy that was just on, that's the biggest advertisement, I think, for a reorganization of the educational structure here in the United States. Because from the time you are in kindergarten until you graduate from college, the entire educational perspective is to feminize and to demasculize men. And that guy who was just on he is the poster boy for that whole issue.
Absolutely, and I don't want to get off on a tirade on feminism, but I mean it is definitely something that I take seriously because I think that feminism has implemented the absolute pussification of the American male. And all you have to do is talk to a male under the age of 30, and they sound like every one of them. I'm sure. Believe me, there's a lot of badasses in the military. I've talked to a lot of young men that are badasses. They're still men. They're out there fighting for our country. But the majority, I mean, this feminine features, feminine vernacular, it used to be a minority. Now it's the majority. And I think you're right, sir. I think it has a lot to do with the public education system, and we're going to have a show about this. I think the public education system should be taken out completely. I mean, it's done. It does. I'm sorry.
If you're in grammar school or high school and you're a male, if you demonstrate any male interests, any sort of aggressive interest, if you want to play a game that's an aggressive game in high school or in grammar school, in the schoolyard, you are immediately targeted and sent to the guidance counselor as being somehow deranged because you want to play a tag or you want to play some kind of a game that has an aggressive bent.
Absolutely. I mean, and I've stated this. I've stated that political correctness is being utilized by the feminist movement, just as McCarthy utilized communism during the McCarthyist era.
Yeah, like that guy who just called up. I thought you were getting a phone call from Michael Jackson. I thought, hey, what's Michael Jackson doing calling ghosts?
And let me tell you, that's the majority of guys under 30 nowadays. Yeah, I mean, what's going on? And I contributed to the feminist movement because I've gotten all kinds of hate mail. I read it last night. These feminists, there is a clear agenda. There is a clear agenda. Go ahead.
I disagree that it's most men. What I'm saying is that people who have a certain political viewpoint, if you have a radically leftist political viewpoint, you'll more than likely have been feminized. And I have no problem with feminization, but of women, not of men. But let's get back on the subject here. Let me talk about drugs a little bit. Everything should be legal. Methamphetamine should be legal. Heroin should be legal. Cocaine should be legal. More people die in the United States. Put it this way: tonight, the reason why Blog Talk Radio listenership is down tonight is that 50% of Blog Talk Radio is in a bar right now, drunk.
Good point.
Taking liquid drugs. Taking liquid drugs, and they're drugging themselves right now. I can guarantee you that 25% of the people listening to your show right now have a cigarette in their mouth. They're having a narcotic delivery system, a nicotine delivery system, which is a cigarette. And if cigarettes are legal, which kill hundreds of thousands of people a year, I can guarantee you off the top of your head, you can rattle off a dozen people that were killed by cigarettes.
Absolutely.
You can rattle off another dozen that were killed by alcohol. And if that's legal, everything should be legal.
Absolutely. And, when they tried to outlaw alcohol, remember that was the big movement back in the 20s and that sort of thing, what they call the temperance movement. And they also did the same thing in the mid-1800s as well. But they made it officially legal, a law, prohibition, in the 20s. And look what happened. I mean, you had the rise of Al Capone. You had the rise of such bootleggers. I could name off a half dozen of them. These people were making lots of money. From what I understand, what I've read about Al Capone, this man was making $20 million a month off of bootlegging alcohol, and that was in the 20s.
Well, let me ask you, I don't understand. Like, in other words, crack cocaine, I understand that it's dangerous. I understand that, marijuana is dangerous. I don't think marijuana is dangerous in what it does chemically to your brain. I think it's more dangerous what it does to your lungs and to your respiratory system. I think if you smoke a joint, you smoke one joint, it's the equivalent to smoking a pack of cigarettes because of the way you inhale it. You swallow that smoke and you deeply inhale it.
Sure.
And so if marijuana is illegal and all of these different, I say to myself, where's the sense here? And these different, for instance, if you're caught with crack cocaine, you're going to be sentenced to a longer prison sentence than some creepy college kid who's doing a line of blow on a glass table, because somehow or another that's more socially acceptable to the people who made these laws. But if you're some poor ghetto kid smoking a bowl of crack, you're going to do 2 years more in jail.
Exactly.
So it's an outrage.
And not only that, I mean, we're just perpetuating drug pushing. I mean, it's economically viable to become a drug pusher. I mean, I've talked to convicts that have been, drug pushers, if you will. You can literally take $90 worth of cocaine and turn it into $300 within, an hour if you know people that need the drugs. I mean, that's a pretty good market. So, I mean, by making it so illegal and by just completely waging this supposed farce war on drugs and just demonizing it to the point to where, I mean, everybody just doesn't even want to acknowledge the problem, this is what perpetuates, not only do we have a high drug price in America, but we consume 85% of the world's drugs.
Well, if I was the President of the United States, I would say one thing. I would say tomorrow morning, well, let's give everybody 7 days. 7 days from tonight, 7 days from my speech. If you're caught with drugs, we're going to do like we do in China. In China, about once every 2 or 3 months, they commandeer the local high school gymnasium, and they bring all of the drug dealers into the gymnasium, and they have a trial in the gymnasium. And after the trial is done, they trot everybody out to the wall outside the gymnasium, and they shoot them in the head. You're either going to do that, let's either take care of business, and let's execute everybody, or let's make it all legal. And when I talk about execute everybody, I'm talking about the people in South Carolina tonight who are growing tobacco and killing hundreds of thousands of people a year. I'm talking about the people in Tennessee who are making Jack Daniels, who are making liquid narcotics. Just make a pronouncement. It's all going to stop, or it's all going to be legal, one or the other.
Exactly. And I agree with you. I mean, I think that there needs to be something done about this problem because we're only perpetuating the growth of it. I mean, 80% of the people in prison are drug offenders. I mean, give me a break. I mean, I'd rather see a child molester in there. And you know what? Child molesters get less time than somebody who does drugs on a consistent basis. Can you believe this?
Yeah, but you know what I have to say, Ghost, is that if most people who are in prison are there for very good reason. And if they weren't selling drugs, they'd be doing some other kind of antisocial behavior.
Do you honestly believe that, sir?
Yes. When you, like for instance on MSNBC, they have this program now where they lionize these social beasts, these predators. They have almost every night on MSNBC.
Yeah, the To Catch a Predator. To Catch a Predator with Chris.
No, not To Catch a Predator. This is a different shows. They do an hour show from different prisons around the United States.
Oh yes, I know what you're talking about. Lockup, I think it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, and they lionize these prisoners. They turn them into media stars. These people are evil presence. They are an evil presence in the world. And if most of these people who are in there on these drug crimes, they were caught because they're high profile. When you're doing some kind of a drug-related transaction, it's a high profile. You have to interact with other people. You have to interact with people who aren't really a criminal element. Like, for instance, the creep who just called before me.
Yeah, exactly.
This kid is more than likely is not a criminal in the sense that he's out there doing different types of crimes, but he's brought in contact with hardcore criminals who sell drugs, and so when a guy who is a criminal who sells drugs, he is more likely to be caught. In other words, when he was out stealing cars, when he was out doing all sorts of different stick-ups and all sorts of different crimes unrelated to drugs, that's difficult to catch a guy doing that. But once they raise their profile by starting to do drugs, starting to sell drugs, now they come in contact with a non-criminal element, and they're more likely to get caught. So people who are in jail for drugs, that's not your grandmother in jail.
Well, of course not.
A rotten creep who was doing something before that, who decided that drugs were a more viable and a more lucrative way to make money. So people who are in jail, people who are selling drugs.
Well, I'm not justifying the drug dealers that are in jail, believe me. I'm talking about the people that are just hooked on these narcotics, that get busted with them, and, they get thrown in jail because, they're addicted to something that is so illegal and so demonized that it's become commercial just to go ahead and throw a bunch of drug users in jail. And I don't think that's where they belong. I think that they need to either, A, they either need the help, or B, they just need the drug supplied to them without the means of it being illegal, because having it illegal only perpetuates this drug dealing activity. And I
understand your point. I understand your point.
And I hate drug dealers more than I hate drug users.
Yeah, no, there's two types of people in jail. There are people who are caught, doing drugs, or there are people in jail who are selling drugs. But there are very few people. I doubt there are any doing serious time in a state prison. In other words, doing more than a year in prison. Very few people who are users who are doing that time. The people who are doing that time are the people who are selling some kind of weight related to drugs, over a kilo of coke, over a certain amount of ounces of marijuana, and I think you'll find almost no one in prison unless they're what they call a predicate felon. What here in New York would be called a predicate felon. In other words, someone who's a 3-time loser.
Yeah.
And their third offense is getting snagged with some heroin or some kind of a controlled substance. But in my mind, I'm just like, to me, it's complete nonsense. The war on drugs is a total farce. It's completely arbitrary. The people the Democrats who control Congress, for 100 years, they were from the South. They made their money. The tobacco people put them in Congress. And they decided that it was all right to smoke cigarettes, but if you're caught with a joint in New Orleans, if you're some poor black guy sitting on a stoop in New Orleans smoking a joint, you're going to jail. But the guy sitting next to him, the guy we're killing with our cigarettes, he can not only sit there, we're going to sell him another pack of cigarettes.
Exactly. And tax it, by the way.
And tax it, exactly. Listen, Gus, you have a great show. I love your show. And let's defeminize the liberal population. Let's bring back people like John Kennedy, who was a liberal and also a World War II hero.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, John Kennedy is probably the only Democrat I can look back on and say that was really a true American.
Yeah, well, like that creeper was just on, he'd consider John Kennedy a Nazi.
Oh, really?
Well, I would think so, based on his. If John Kennedy was alive today, he'd be considered thought of as to the right of Mike Huckabee.
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding me? Before we started getting into the program, as a matter of fact, I think the Republican Party has lost me. I mean, you've got a lot of social liberals running for the presidency in the Republican Party, and I just don't understand why the Republicans aren't talking about that.
Well, let me tell you, Ghost, when Hillary Clinton is on that ballot, believe me, you'd vote for Al Sharpton before you would vote for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, I don't want Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, to me, is Jimmy Carter on steroids, to be honest with you. And I don't want that, sir.
Yeah, well, to me, Hillary Clinton is a masculine version of Jimmy Carter.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying. I mean, this is just ridiculous. Her platform is just unbelievable, what she wants to do for the country, and I think it's going to take a country tremendous step back.
Well, she won't get elected. I think that we had this discussion about a week ago, and put it this way: if John McCain is the nominee, the African American community, Harlem is closer to the World Trade Center than Dubuque, Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa, and people, African Americans who are in New York, in Philadelphia, Baltimore, Chicago, Los Angeles, they are the people and the community as a group, as a community here in the United States, who is most endangered as a group by mass terrorism, by mass murder.
Absolutely.
And believe me, African Americans, besides having different liberal viewpoints on different social issues, they are, like everyone else on the planet, into self-preservation. And when they see John McCain is a guy who I think would be able to garner a lot of votes in the African American community, and conversely, if she does defeat Obama, there'll be a lot of bad blood there. If I was an African American, I'd be good and pissed that a guy like a stand-up guy like Obama is submarined by a rat like Hillary.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can agree to that, sir.
Yeah. God bless you. Good night.
Thank you for calling in. You have yourself a great night, sir.
Okay.
Well, we're getting some pretty good insight here. We're talking about the war on drugs. Is it working? Should we continue it on? I mean, should we continue with the logical fallacy of the war on drugs? We want to hear your particular perspective on the subject matter. And the reason I bring it up is because, I mean, it's a serious subject matter to our American society. 85% of the world's drugs is consumed right here in America, folks. And we're supposed to be waging some sort of war on drugs. And I'm going against my conservative constituency that listens to this show. And as a matter of fact, I'm seeing a couple of people in the chat room saying, are you kidding me? I thought this was a conservative show. It is conservative, folks. The bottom line is that I like to oblige myself to logic. And logic will tell me that this war on drugs is only perpetuating more and more drug use. And like I've stated before, I think the government needs to get involved. It needs to get involved, and at the same time, we could generate a considerable amount of revenue for the government so that we can spend it on all the programs that are draining our pocketbooks. And as a matter of fact, I think we need to cut most of these programs, but that's another story. It's another show, and we'll do that probably next week sometime. 646-652-4869 is the number to call. We're talking about the war on drugs. Is it working? I mean, is this actually putting a dent in drug use? I don't think so. And like I've stated before, I think that what we need to do is we need to put forth some sort of government system where they can cultivate it, whether the government has to subcontract it or whatever the case might be. Cultivate it. And once they cultivate it, they could dispense it at locations in high-dense metropolis areas for less cost. I mean, take out the drug dealer. I mean, that's what I want. I want the drug dealer taken out of business. I want the drug lord taken out of business. I don't want to see these people, on TV, with the bling-bling and, the big fancy cars because they can push some drugs on some innocent people. On our children. Just take out the drug dealer. If you don't agree with me, give me a call. 646-652-4869 is the number to call. Like I said, if the government can just somehow make this legal, I mean, dispense it at locations in high-dense metropolis areas, we could generate taxes off the sale of the drug. Not only will we'll be able to generate sales and taxes off these drugs, at the same time we can find out who's doing the narcotics. All right? I mean, let's say what I want to happen happens tomorrow. The government cultivates the drugs, which will probably be a lot cleaner, a lot safer than what's being handed out here by your average drug dealer. Somebody can just walk into one of these government locations and say, look, I want some cocaine. Give me this much cocaine. Here's the money. Thank you very much. And they need to show some ID. They need to show that they're an actual American citizen. They need to show, who they are and that sort of thing so we can document this. The government can document who is using drugs. And at the same time, it'll help the employer. Because I'm an employer. And I know for a fact that there's a whole black market to pass and beat drug tests. The whole drug testing black market, you should read into it. Google it up right now. You're going to see so many drug test scheming concoctions, products. It's a whole black market. And this way an employer can, dial into this little database or go in through the internet one way or the other, pay about $10 for each time he accesses the database, and the government can generate money that way as well. And the employer can see. If the person applying for a job with their company, they can see, okay, let me see, this person did narcotics in the past, he's a cokehead, he's asked for heroin or whatever the case might be, and he'll be able to question the employee about it. I mean, if they went to go get cocaine last week, obviously you're not going to want to hire that person. But if they snorted cocaine about 2 or 3 years ago, you can ask them about it and say, look, it shows here on the records that you went in and you got some cocaine. Are you still on the drug? Do you still use? Can I trust you? That sort of thing. Because this ridiculous drug testing, first of all, it costs a lot more than a $10 access fee to a damn database. I mean, it costs a lot of money to drug test folks. And at the same time, you're not 100% sure if the person that you're drug testing is actually drug-free. And at the same time, our children won't be exposed to this garbage because they're not going to have some drug dealer going to the public school and getting people hooked on this crap. You got everybody out here in the damn White House to the damn Congress playing with their pecker shafts, thinking that this problem is somehow going to go away. It's not going to go away. It's not going to go away. And you people that are in here saying, oh, my God, I can't believe he's saying legalize drugs. Well, call me up and tell me another alternative. Tell me what we can do. 646-652-4869. Like I said, I'm going against the conservative thought on this one because I'm looking at it, and logic tells me that all we're doing is imprisoning people because they just want a narcotic. I mean, if people want to kill themselves, why in the hell should we be stopping them? I mean, allow these people to participate in their narcotic activity. I just want the drug dealer gone. I hate the drug dealer more than I hate the drug user. The drug dealer pays no taxes. He contributes more and more drug use to our society because all he's got to do is give a 2 to cocaine to some child somewhere and say, here, try this, and he's got himself a customer. And that's how these drug dealers do it. You see, if you dispense this narcotics, and I'm talking all narcotics, if you dispense narcotics at places that are located throughout the United States of America in highly dense metropolis areas, have the government cultivate the drugs, dispense the drugs at these locations, we'll be able to track the drugs. We'll be able to bring down the price of drugs as well. I mean, that's all I'm suggesting. I mean, we'll be able to generate taxes. We'll be able to generate a lot of things. We can't just continue on and think that, somehow this drug problem is going to solve itself. And I got a question here in the chat room. Is pot a narcotic? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I think this whole war on drugs and encapsulating this marijuana garbage into this same category as these hard narcotics, I mean, I think it's just perpetuated drug use. And I was stating this earlier to the person that asked this question. I said, look, this demonization of narcotics and then encompassing marijuana into the mix with this thing, it's deceiving to everybody who doesn't do drugs. Now, let me explain something to you. You got children out here that are exposed, and I remember in the 80s, they even claimed in some commercials that if you smoke too much pot, you can OD on the damn thing. And once they try marijuana, once they smoke their first joint or pipe or eat their fucking brownie or whatever they eat, once they try it, they're going to be, wait a minute, I'm not ODing. I mean, this is actually pretty good stuff here. Let me try it again. And let me try it again. And let me try it again. And then once they realize that they're not going to die from marijuana, then they're going to say, well, hell, I mean, they lied to me. I'm going to snort some cocaine. It's going to be all right. I'm going to go shoot some heroin. It's okay. They lied to me about marijuana. That's why marijuana is the gateway drug. And as far as marijuana is concerned, I think it should be just completely decriminalized altogether. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, out here in Texas, they've already somewhat decriminalized it. I mean, you can get caught with up to an ounce of pot, and all they're going to do is just write you a ticket from now on. Can you believe that? I mean, why are we still doing this? Why don't we just decriminalize the damn? I don't even want to call it a drug. Why don't we just decriminalize the herb? I mean, come on now. Let's think, people. Do I want children smoking pot? Absolutely not. But do I think that people need to do large stints of jail time? I don't think so. I absolutely don't think so. Anyway, 646-652-4869. Give me a call if you have any type of viewpoint on this war on drugs. Like I've stated, I'm going against my conservative people on this. I mean, I'm getting a lot of flack because I just want to legalize all drugs. I mean, we need to do it. We need to do it. It'll generate money. It'll generate taxes. I mean, it'll solve, maybe some deficit problems. I mean, it could do a lot of things here. We'll bring down the cost of drugs. And if we're going to bring down the cost of drugs so much by legalizing it, that it's going to take out the drug dealer. And I hate drug dealers. I hate drug pushers. I hate the drug cartels in South America. I hate all those people. I want to put them out of business. And if you're going to sit here and disagree with me, that means that you are for the drug dealer continuing his rage on America. 85% of the world's drugs is consumed right here in America. Why? Because it's illegal. That's why. And the numbers prove it. The numbers absolutely prove it, folks. And we need to do something about it. If we don't do anything about it, we're just going to sit here and tickle our ass cracks and be like, oh, we just need to just throw more people in jail. That's all we need to do. I mean, that's basically what these people are doing. And the last caller brought up a good point. The reason that you don't hear too many people on Blog Talk Radio right now is because more than 50-60% of the people that would usually, congregate in this little arena are out drinking their asses off. They're out there, getting too close to a bottle of beer, drinking a cheap-ass bottle of hooch, getting inebriated. It's just disgusting. Hey, Ozone, I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. And what we need to do is we need to, refocus our attention, and we need to tell our politicians, look, we want you to bust the real criminals, all right? This is what we want you to bust. I find it funny that and I'm sure everybody that's listening in watches To Catch a Predator with old Chris Hansen. I mean, at first glance, it's funny, It's funny, it's something to laugh at, that sort of thing. But then you realize that these guys don't even go to prison for soliciting sex from an underage patsy or an underage decoy. And yet somebody who's using hard narcotics, they get thrown away, a couple of years in prison just because they're killing themselves. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, we've got another caller here. 212, you're on the air.
Hey, Ghost, how's it going? I got my reasons.
How you doing? What you feel about the drug problem here?
Well, I agree with you. I'm not a drug user myself, although I sound like it sometimes. But I agree with you, and I think that it's analogous to prohibition in a way. I mean, it's never been fully legal, but I mean, the legal drug alcohol causes many more problems than most of these drugs, and yet the enforcement of laws about drunk driving and stuff like that is kind of lackadaisical. I mean, it's getting tougher now, but I think this is the one thing I'll say about the conservative movement with this stuff is that they basically, the harsh laws, the Rockefeller laws and the 3 strikes you're out and all that stuff, that came out of the conservative movement in the 80s.
Absolutely, and let me tell you, I was for it. I was for it in the beginning. Believe me, on paper it looks great. Oh, yeah, let's just throw them all in jail and that sort of thing. But it's been a long time since the 80s, and it doesn't seem like it's curbing the problem. On the contrary, I think it's perpetuating the problem. And I'm not going to sit here and be one of these morons that sticks to his principles when logic is basically defeating my principles. So, I mean, I've acknowledged the fact that we need to do something about this. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. you know, the thing is that the crime rate's actually declined a great deal, but the prison population continues to go up, and a lot of this has to do with these minor offenses, in terms of like small amounts of marijuana and stuff like that. And I think there's some states. I think you mentioned that California just changed it, so it's not.
No, actually, it's Texas. I'm down here in Texas.
Yeah.
You can literally have an ounce of pot on you and get just a ticket written.
Yeah, well, that's not a bad policy, and I think it coming out of Texas, sort of, not to be prejudiced towards that state, but it sort of proves that, what am I trying to say? That there's a problem there that needs to be addressed, and even though it's a very conservative state, like they're taking a step like that, I think it's a good move.
Absolutely, and do you agree with me that the demonization of marijuana in general? And this is my theory. I think that we've demonized it. I remember in the 80s, these commercials. I remember one commercial specifically where there was a guy on the floor supposedly ODing. You had ambulances coming in, and there was a kid right there kind of hysterical, and they asked the kid, what happened to your friend? And they said, oh, we just tried a little bit of pot, insinuating that, pot was somehow going to make you OD and, foam at the mouth or something. And then once, a teenager gets a hold of his first joint, and smokes it, and then they realize they're not OD'd yet, and then they smoke it again, they maintain that same safety with cocaine and heroin and other narcotics. Or am I wrong?
Well, I think those ads are designed to shock. I mean, my favorite was I did it because of you. Oh, who taught you this?
Oh, yeah.
I did it because
watching
you did Daddy or you did Mommy or whatever. That was pretty effective. That was like, pack your bags, we're going on a guilt trip.
Exactly, but I mean, did it do anything? I mean, I see more and more teenagers now, participating in not just marijuana. I mean, marijuana, first of all, we shouldn't even be considering it a drug. I mean, it's just, that is just ridiculous. There's been no documented case of anybody ODing on this herb. And look, I don't do it. But I see logic, and logic tells me that this is not something that we need to correlate with cocaine and heroin and acid and shrooms or anything else.
Well, if I could put on my liberal suit for a second, since we're just up to MLK Day, I mean, there's a thread that goes back to the 30s and before with jazz culture and basically black culture that has always equated marijuana use with that subculture.
Actually, I've done research on why marijuana is legal, and it has something to do with that. But at the same time, it came with the illegal immigrants from Mexico that it basically influxed into Texas. They were really, really heavy induced by marijuana. As a matter of fact, that's where the name comes from. It's Spanish.
Right. If you look at an exploitation type picture for what is it called? The one.
Reefer Madness?
Yeah, if you look at Reefer Madness, the whole subtext is it's about these people that go to jazz clubs and hang out with beatniks, and the whole idea is that it's part of a criminal lifestyle that goes beyond just marijuana.
And that's just ridiculous. And what's unfortunate is that, and just like there was a caller earlier in the program, I mean, as soon as I told him that I believe that we should legalize narcotics, he was floored. I mean, I just think that we've demonized this so much that we can't even approach the notion of possibly legalizing these narcotics. And I'm not just saying we should legalize coke and you can go down to a corner store and get a coke line or a crack vial. I think that there needs to be some responsibility from the government. I think that there could be some money made off this. I don't mean to be a capitalist on it, but I mean, to be completely honest with you, if the government cultivated it, it dispensed it at locations throughout metropolises throughout the United States, we would bring down the cost of the drugs, and at the same time we'd take out the drug dealer, which I hate. I hate drug dealers. And we'll take out the drug lords in South America, and we'll be able to generate taxes not only on the sales of the narcotics, but employers that are looking into the database that is going to be obtained on the information of these drug users. He can $10 in access to the database, and I mean, there's a lot of ways to generate revenue off of this. And at the same time, we can utilize some of that revenue to educate children, to educate the communities, and to possibly help some of these people that are hooked on it get off.
That almost sounds like a social program.
Unfortunately, it is a social problem. That's why I'm saying I'm going against conservative thinking, but I'm thinking that we're not just going to blow money at this.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to generate money at the same time help people.
Yeah.
And I just think that seems to be a more viable solution than this ridiculous war on drugs. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. I was for the war on drugs when it came out. I mean, I was a conservative. I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Well, I see it. I wasn't. I looked at it as a political thing that was motivated as an attack on poor people, basically. You know.
You think it was an attack on poor people, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I just think
it was a poor way to address the serious problem with crack in the inner cities and whatnot, which was a real problem, you know. But it was a poorly formulated solution to it.
I see.
Yeah.
Now, do you have anything to add that's like different? Do you think that I'm maybe going off my rocker here, and you know?
No, well, I mean, this will scare you. I really liked the beginning of the show because like it was cracking me up because I can totally I can relate. The clicks on BTR bug the crap out of me, and I know that any time that you stand up for a position that's not, you know, I mean I don't get that much shit from liberals, but you know, I'll make fun of something. I mean, I do some humor on my show. I'll make fun of something that liberals think I shouldn't make fun of or something like that, you know. And it's all the same shit. And I totally was like, it was cracking me up listening to the beginning of your show because like I relate. So that should make you nervous.
Are you talking about my tirade about you know, the conservative or the supposed conservative cliques out here?
The other BTR hosts, and people talk about their stupid blogs like it means something, and people talk about their BTR shows like they're real radio shows when it's just like a website basically. It's like get some frigging perspective, and like, you know, and leave me the F alone, you know, because like, I'm going to express myself how I want to. If you don't like it, you don't have to listen.
Absolutely, and what's really upsetting me, you know, and I'm trying to, you know, patronize some of these supposed conservative BTR shows, is that they're not really conservative. And like I was stating previous, and I know we're getting off the subject here, but I mean, this is really starting to irk me, is the fact that we have a lot of people that are claiming that they're conservative, and yet they are embracing the open social liberalism that the Republican Party is turning into. And I tried to pose this question in a show where all the big conservative blogger cliques were at. I forgot the name of the show. The guy's name was Moran or something. Everybody was on the show, like the ridiculous moron Ed Morrissey and, you know, all those other conservative bloggers that think that, you know, their blog is the second coming or something. I tried to pose questions in the chat room and say, look, what about the social liberalism that's running rampant in the conservative Republican Party? And they just ignored me. And as a matter of fact, they knew I was in the chat room because they said my name over the air there, but they didn't want to answer any of the questions because, I mean, in my opinion, I think that, and I don't, you may agree, may disagree, I think that the Republican Party has been hijacked by liberals.
Well, I probably don't agree with that. That's a long conversation, but I can give you the perspective from the progressive liberal side, which is basically very similar. It's like, you know, a lot of people in my camp really dislike Hillary.
Huh?
Not dislike her, but they don't think she's the strongest candidate for various reasons. I think.
What's the main reason?
Well, the main reason is she's not left enough. If you want to just put it on the political spectrum, she's too much of a Washington insider. She's business as usual. She's too conservative for us. Okay, right? It's the same. It's kind of the same argument. So we have so the people that are like further left, they really like Barack Obama. Younger people really like Barack Obama, and the people that are the furthest to the left tend to like John Edwards because he's really got like he's almost like an anti-corporatist.
Yeah, even though he's a multimillionaire.
Yeah, but I mean, but what he's proposing, his platform is very threatening, I think, to corporate interests. And so, like, so here's what happens: when you go into when you have a conversation with a bunch of liberals and progressives and people like that, they don't want to hear you taking shots at Hillary, even if they're legitimate shots, because they want everybody to like hold together. Like, it's cool to take shots at the Republicans, but when you start targeting your own camp, people get nervous.
Yeah, I've noticed this because I mean it's really starting to hurt because I'm a social conservative before anything else.
Right.
You know, I believe that we need to bring back the American family. I mean, you pretty much heard my views on everything. I'm against feminism, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
but
I don't think you know what feminism is, but that's
no. Well, you see, yeah. I acknowledge the fact that feminism was needed during the turn of the 20th century, and I give those women at that time all the credit in the world for according the woman the right to vote, according the woman the right to work, and that sort of thing. But feminism has spawned into something completely different, and I'm talking about the Gloria Steinem feminists from the 60s. Now, they've refashioned, once again, and you see, this is why you're having a hard time seeing things from my perspective. The feminist movement has turned woman liberation into subliminal prostitution.
See, that's what I don't get. First of all, it's women's liberation, not women liberation, so you might want to just make a mental note of that. It's the women's liberation movement, not the women liberation movement.
Well, whatever. That's schematics. I'm just saying that.
Well, it's possessive.
It's possessive?
Yeah, it's possessive. Women's liberation. So if it was like conservative liberation, it would have a apostrophe s at the end of it because it's possessive, right?
Well, I mean, and let me get back to the reason why I think that they're turning into subliminal prostitutes, and it's based off of the feminist ideology. The reason is because woman's liberation is equated to subliminal prostitution. I mean, this is what liberation is to females nowadays. They can just go in and out of divorces. I mean, they're changing divorces like dirty, shitty underwear. You got, women just, shitting out about 5 or 6 kids, 5 or 6 different fathers, and this is basically perpetuated by the feminist movement from the 60s because this is equated to liberation. I mean, the ability to go out and be able to utilize their sex.
Yeah, see, I think that what I equate with liberation is being able to have a job or choose not to have a job or whatever.
But that's not that. That we've already done that though. I mean, it's already been done. I mean,
yeah, but the next level is not being a object to men and being somebody that wants a boyfriend that has a lot of money. That's not the next level.
No, well, that's what it's turned into. That's what it's evolved to.
I don't see that. That's not feminism. That's a backsliding into a 50s style women being subjugated by men. If I have a big wallet and I get Beyonce to do what I want when I want it because I have a lot of money, it's really difficult to present that as a picture of feminism. That's a picture of misogyny and male domination.
Absolutely not. I mean,
we're railing against in the 60s.
If it was misogyny, then the man wouldn't have to go out and buy the $50,000 car. He would just tell the woman, "Get your ass over here," and that sort of thing. I mean, if it was misogyny. But I mean, I think that the feminist movement. Like I said, I don't want you to equate what I'm saying to the people or to the women
just if you look at historically, treating women as chattel, if you will, where you have like a dowry, well, I'm
not talking. You see, you're taking it to a certain extreme there, man.
It's the same argument. When there's money associated with, the possession of a woman or whatever, it's the same argument. So to imply that somehow is what the women's liberation movement is or was. I mean, my mom was a feminist. She went to Berkeley, California. She wrote for Ms. Magazine.
Uh-huh.
She was the real deal, right? Now, she would. I mean, to suggest that being subjugated for money is somehow feminism.
But you see, you're looking at it as if these women are blatantly being prostituted. They're not being prostituted because the man is saying, "Look, here's the money, come over here." The women are basically refashioning the appetite of the man to basically buy all these materialistic widgets so that she can basically say, okay, you're good enough for me to, let you penetrate me.
Yeah, that's what was going on in the 50s.
No,
that's what goes on in the caste system where they decide if you're from the right family or not to marry this woman, and how many oxen you're going to give.
Well, I'm not even equating it to that. That first of all, that's ridiculous, primitive garbage. I'm talking about, let's go back to women, appreciating a man for his character, his personality, whatever happened to love and romance and that sort of thing.
That is feminism. What you just described, if a woman has her own stuff where she can take care of she has her own job or whatever, and she doesn't have to worry about being taken care of by a man, then that's feminism. Then she can make that choice. She can say, oh, Fred's a sweet guy. He doesn't have a lot of money, but I like him, so I'm going to go with him. That's feminism. I got it backwards.
Maybe that's what was the root of feminism, but it's not like that anymore, my man. I think, with all due respect, I think that what feminism has done, and this is what a woman told me one time. I go into these voice chat communities. Actually, I have a big room in a little voice chat community that I patronize. A woman came in there, because I'm notorious for being an anti-feminist. A woman came in there and said, you know what, Ghost, you're just pissed off because women now have 50% of the economy, and if we wanted to, we could use our vaginas to take the other 50%. And I swear to God, that's what she said.
That was a joke.
No, it wasn't a joke. She meant that literally, and that's what the culmination of the feminist movement is, in my view. I mean, don't you agree? I mean, you can't equate that to, selling a woman off for a couple of bulls or something.
So your idea of the feminist movement is like vagina, like the 30-foot vagina takes over New York?
Well, no. To be completely, to be completely concise, I think that what feminism has done to the American woman has turned her into a subliminal prostitute, or if you're like Britney Spears, you become an emotional, impulsive wreck because your liberation, you don't really even understand it. You're equating that to going out and hopping on anything that looks good in a leather jacket. I mean, and jump in and out of marriages and that sort of thing.
I would read up on what was going on in society in the 50s and early 60s, because
those were good times, my man.
The condition that you're describing is a throwback to that. So the condition that you're describing is basically where the men could subjugate the women mostly by their economic power, and also by their societal power, because society said it was fine. So the man made the money, the woman stayed home, and if she didn't like it, she got a beat down.
Now, I'm not advocating women
I'm not
getting
advocating
beat
that
down.
either, but that's just the reality of where we came from. Okay? So now if you go to today and say that a woman that is living a similar life where she's choosing her mate based on earning potential and whatnot, and is okay with making compromises about her own self-esteem or whatever, the only difference in that equation is she's not getting beaten. It's a throwback. It's not progress.
But at the same time, I mean, don't you agree that is subliminal prostitution? And on top of which, if another man with a bigger fat wallet came along, she'll go ahead and go with that guy.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Let's put my position this way. I agree that there's something seriously wrong with what's happening with the women in our society right now. But the problem is that they are becoming more conservative. They are becoming more like the 50s. The problem is not feminism. Feminism was a rising trend in the 60s and 70s, and somewhere in the mid 80s.
It was a man-hating organization, right?
No, that's the extreme wing of it. Okay. So the fact that one woman had hairy armpits somewhere, and that Andrea Dworkin said that all consensual sex is rape. That's like one person that took it in an academic environment that took it over the ledge. But in general, it empowered women. you have TV shows like Maude or whatever. So the 70s was like the high point of feminism. And then after the 70s, thanks to Reagan and everybody wanting to go back to the 50s and have a barbecue and wear pink shirts and poodle dresses, everything went back. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So I think where we're at now.
Well, that's a title to a Vladimir Lenin paper. But go ahead.
Is it? That's funny. No. So what happened is, the movement. There's been some actual gains. I mean, women are now, by and large, they're paid close to what men make. It's not completely fixed yet. But they have the power to sue people if they're sexually harassed and all these good things.
Okay, now I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Now,
but I think socially, just to finish my point, I disagree with you in terms of like that. I think socially they're turning away from feminism. Whatever the subliminal prostitution or whatever you want to call it, the phenomenon that you've picked on is not a turn towards feminism. It's a turn towards away from feminism, because feminism is about empowering women. It's not about.
Well, yeah, I think women are empowered to the point where I think they're trying to take utter domination. I mean, let me give you an example. Look at our justice system. I mean, our justice system is so gender biased, it's disgusting. And why is that? It's because the feminist movement asserted themselves and basically made it politically okay to be gender biased. I mean,
how is it gender biased?
Well, let me explain to you. I know a man who worked hard. I mean, he didn't want his wife to work, and she could have worked if she wanted to. He wasn't some misogynist jerk off that was knocking her teeth back or anything like that.
Right.
But he would go out to work, worked hard, 10 hours a day, and because, Miss Housewife over here, I guess, wasn't getting enough romance or he wasn't around enough, she hopped on the Johnson of the guy down the street.
Okay, so they got a divorce, and she won a good settlement.
Well, no, not only she won good settlement, I mean, she got all 3 kids, which is ridiculous. She got all 3 kids. He was in a state where you have to pay alimony, so now not only did he have to pay child support, he had to pay alimony. He had to give 50% of everything he had to this philandering whore bag, and after everything was said and done, the man could barely live off, what was it? I think he got like $100 a week or $80 a week or something like that.
It's an anecdotal story. I could say, well, OJ got off. So therefore the
No, but that wasn't based on gender bias. What happened to this man? He did nothing wrong.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
He was not the adulterer.
You're drawing a conclusion based on an anecdotal thing.
Okay, look at the statistics. There are reasons. Look at the statistics. How many women get their children when they're divorced? You want to know
more women get custody of the children than men.
You want me to tell you the percentage?
Sure. Go ahead.
85%.
Okay, well that seems to reinforce a value system in our society that's been around for a long time. I don't think that's specifically a feminist thing.
It was the feminist movement. And you see, I think because your mother was a feminist, I think you're trying to, I mean, maybe your mom had different ideology, but to be honest with you, the main reason the feminist movement is still around today is because it is empowering the woman to believe that they can dominate power based on their sexuality and their sex appeal.
I don't think many women that I know really can articulate what the feminist movement was or is, and I don't think that many. I don't think definitely on the conservative side, I don't think people even know what feminism was or is. I mean, so to say that that's what's empowering people to do different things, I think is misleading. I mean, let me give you an example. Do you know about the bill that was just passed about gay and lesbian workers discrimination? Do you know about that bill?
No. Can you enlighten me on that? I have no idea.
Yeah, sure. It was just passed a couple months ago. It's been on the floor of the House for close to 30 years. Bella Abzug and Mayor Ed Koch brought it to the Congress, in 1977 or something, and it finally got passed. Now check this out. What it says is simply that you can't discriminate on the job based on somebody being gay or the perception that somebody's being gay. Now, I didn't know this, but many, many states had no protections for that. So if I lived in one of those states and I was a boss and I didn't want to give this guy a promotion because I didn't like gays, it was fine. And that's up until this year.
Okay.
And I think so that's something that to me I was sort of floored by this. One, I just didn't know that. I just assumed that a law like that would already existed or something. You know?
But with all due respect, I think that the gay movement is just an offshoot of the feminist movement.
That's what I'm saying. That's precisely what I'm saying. If you let me finish my point, what I'm saying is that if the feminist movement and the gay movement, or whatever you want to call it, has come so far, then why did this bill sit on the House on the floor of Congress for like 30 years? I mean, like intelligent design's gotten further. Like Terry Schiavo got more political clout than this.
Well, that's based on the bureaucracy of the House and the Senate. I mean, bill's got to go to a subcommittee, then it's got to go to committee, and then in the process of all that,
it's stalled because people don't want it. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I think the point that conservatives like to make about like the gay movement or whatever, I don't think there's really a term like that, but like the power that gay people have in our society is like highly overstated. And I think that example is proof of it. And I think if you go to the feminist movement, I think, in my opinion, and we may or may not agree on this, but in my opinion, the feminist movement kind of died out in the late 70s.
No, and my friend, it is still alive and well. Believe me.
Well, the accomplishments the accomplishments are alive and well. But I don't think women's attitudes. I don't think men's attitudes towards women have deteriorated a great deal.
No, I disagree. Now, let me give you another example.
You say women shit out 5 babies. Is that respectful towards women?
Well, first of all, the reason I state that in such a harsh manner is because this has become the social norm. It is the social norm.
I understand your rhetorical point, but to choose that specific thing is basically to trivialize, birth and women.
Well, that's what they've created, reasons. I mean, that's what the feminist movement's created. I mean, they've created an environment that is socially acceptable for this activity. And I remember a point in time where society...
I don't think it's socially acceptable.
Are you kidding me?
What culture is it socially acceptable to have multiple babies from different
I see it all over the place, reasons. I mean, look at Britney Spears. Look at her sister. I mean, this has become the social norm.
Spears is a joke in society.
I agree, but there's still people that are listening to her, and obviously they're female, and she's perpetuating an ideology that is obviously embraced by most people in society. And all I'm simply stating, as a social conservative, we need to do something about it. Now, I'm not trying to regulate people's sex lives. I get criticized a lot that, I'm no better than the Taliban, that I want, a morality police or something like that. I don't want nothing of the sort. All I'm simply stating is that America needs to get some moral ethos and not embrace such activity that's just going to throw us into Sodom and Gomorrah.
What do you suggest?
Well, I've suggested it many times. I think we need to outlaw divorce, okay? And once we outlaw divorce, people are going to think twice before they start casually going in and out of marriages. On top of which, I think that adultery should be a jailable offense.
Uh-huh.
I'm not joking.
I know you're not.
I think that we really seriously need to consider these things, because if not, you're going to have this continual perception that it's just socially acceptable to go out and just be sexually promiscuous, and it doesn't matter how many kids you have, it doesn't matter how many abortions you have.
I don't think that's true. Let's go back to the do you know about the abstinence education failure thing?
I'm not. You have never heard me say abstinence, and I am not advocating abstinence, okay? I am not.
But you know what, the numbers, the actual statistics don't support your point. Like in terms of teenage sexual activity, teenage STDs, and teenage unwanted pregnancies, like nationwide, the numbers are way down.
Well, you want to know why they're down is because, first of all, you were talking about the abstinence program, and I think that's ridiculous because
it doesn't work.
Well, no, not only doesn't it not work, it just perpetuates deviant activity. For instance, you got all these people signing these pledges that they're going to stay virgins until they're 18 or whatever the case might be.
Right.
Well, you know, the way they basically got around that little contract was by utilizing old Bill Clinton's method of oral copulation. And now they're participating in, you know, anal sex and that sort of thing to get around the whole abstinence contract. That's why, you know, sexual promiscuous or supposed sexual promiscuous activity is down within teenagers because they're all blowing each other.
No, that's not true. Because here's the thing. The bookend on the abstinence education statistics is Texas, that poured the most money into it and had the most abstinence education.
And believe me, that's why I live in Texas,
right.
So I know about it.
But they have the worst outcomes. So the states that didn't have abstinence programs or didn't push them as hard, they have better numbers than Texas. Texas is the worst in terms of improvement. Texas is the worst. So
and believe me, that's why do you think this is such a near and dear subject matter to my heart? I'm seeing this. I'm seeing it. I travel all over Texas, and I see the same damn thing. It is socially acceptable for women to have all these children, and it's just okay. And I think the government doesn't help. I think that you can get, what, $2,000 a year a kid now? That's ridiculous.
Well, I'll agree with you on that. I just think that your perception of where the problem comes, like the abstinence thing, it to me is like a no-brainer as a progressive or liberal or whatever. The abstinence thing is like if you give kids information, you give them access to good scientific information, and maybe even condoms if they need them or whatever.
Well, I don't agree with that.
I know you don't. That's why I'm stating my position. I'm being straight up with my position before we talk about it. If you do that stuff, kids have less sex. They have sex later if they do have sex, and they have less unplanned pregnancies, less abortions, and less STDs and other problems. It's proven and statistically that that's the case. The more information young people have about sexuality, the less sex they have. It's just the reality.
Do you have statistics on that? Because I know California tried to do that, and yet they're having an explosion of teenage pregnancy.
I can find you the article on the abstinence education thing in Texas, yeah.
Well, I know. Believe me, that I'm witnessing the abstinence backlash. Believe me, it's not working. I'm not stupid. I have logic. I mean, but there needs to be something done.
I can give you my own anecdotal story. I mean, I grew up with that book, Where Did I Come From? The cartoon book that shows you like the naked parents and shit. Do you remember that stuff from the 70s?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I knew all that stuff by the time I was probably 8 or 9. I knew, where babies come from and all that stuff. And like, I didn't lose my virginity or whatever until I was in college. I mean, and I'm not saying that like it's some big accomplishment, because I know there's people that wait until they get married and stuff like that. I'm just saying that it was a conscious choice. I had information, I had protection and blah, 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 and all that good stuff. And I had a girlfriend in high school, and I didn't want to get stuck in my hometown.
Exactly. And now, look, I'm not suggesting that everybody stay abstinent until they're married. I mean, this is not. We live in a sexual promiscuous society, but I think that we need, as a society in general, to have some sort of moral ethos once again. To understand that we can't let this activity be socially acceptable. And what I mean by this activity, I'm talking about, this promiscuous sexual activity that makes it okay for women to go in and out of divorces. Having all these children, having all these divorces. It's just ridiculous.
Well, let me give you another a lefty dose of something that you'll hate, but it'll make for some good radio. Like all these value systems that are sort of reinforced by popular culture and the media and whatnot. This is how corporations make money. So if we can turn the dial down a little bit on the corporate structure, and say, if people would say no to television of that variety, and say no to the objectification of women in music videos and whatnot, to the degree that it's at, and the I mean, listen to my last show. We did a whole thing about plastic surgery and you know, and all that stuff, and how that hurts women's self-esteem, and how women have these impossible things put on them by society. If we rejected all that stuff, and that means corporations end up making less money on things like hair care products and artificial breasts and whatnot. Like, we could deal with a lot of that stuff by simply that sort of like granola crunching, what used to be called consciousness in the 70s, feminism, consciousness, you know, love, self-love, self-worth. I mean, that's not a moral ethos in the sense it's not religion, but I mean, if you teach your children that they're valuable in and of themselves.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem. Reasons
right, but
we don't have parents doing that.
That's why I say that your position is not really about feminism, because what feminism in its purest form, even go read Gloria Steinem.
I have read it, and it makes me puke.
What it's about like, you know, it's about if you don't want to shave your armpits, you know, it's okay. That's what it's about. So it may seem extreme by our standards, but the bottom line is it's about loving your body, loving yourself, and being okay with what you are. And now these other systems are put on women by corporations who have a vested interest in making money, fashion industry.
Now you're saying corporations. You know, Ozone is in the chat room saying it's not corporations, it's liberal Hollywood.
Isn't that those are the biggest the entertainment corporations of Hollywood are not corporations?
Yeah, but what he's suggesting is that, you know, the corporations have been, you know, basically infiltrated by liberal Hollywood because of the fact that a lot of these people that are heading these corporations.
No. The corporations they had no problem selling the Mel Gibson Jesus movie, right? And if they all of a sudden they're like, okay, this makes money, great.
Well, I mean, they didn't give it that much props, my man. I mean,
they promoted the hell out of that.
Actually, it was Mel Gibson that came out of his pocket that did that.
Well, the same production company promoted some other movie that was like completely on the opposite end of the spectrum too. I'm forgetting it, but I mean, the bottom line is the company that put out the Mel Gibson movie and distributed and promoted it, they then went on to distribute and promote a very secular, very like liberal, you know, decadent movie right after that movie. You know, so it's not about politics. It's about making money, and if what makes money is, you know, Charlie Wilson's War instead of Redacted, you know, then they're going to sell Charlie Wilson's War. There's no, you know, they don't care.
So, but you see, this is my point. Don't you think that we disagree on a lot of things here.
Yeah.
Now, your definition of feminism is obviously different from the way I conceive it. But don't you agree that there is a serious problem with our social, with the social ramifications of socially accepting multiple births for multiple different partners, divorce, that sort of thing?
Yeah,
can we both agree to that?
Yeah, I don't know about the multiple birth thing because I haven't really seen that much.
What part of the country are you in?
I'm in New York City.
And you don't see multiple births by multiple different fathers out there? I mean, are you in the like Upper Manhattan area, or I mean, what?
Yeah, I'm in like Midtown. I mean, I guess you'd see that a little bit, you know, in the ghettos and stuff. But like, you know, it's not common.
I'm seeing it. And look, I pay a lot of money for this home I have here in Texas, and I see it in my neighbor's home. I see it. You know, anybody who has children is dealing with this problem. And it's running rampant, and it's disgusting because there should be no reason why teenage children are out here being sexually promiscuous to the point where they're they're having 2 or 3 children before the age of 20 to 23.
Yeah, well, that's bad, and we don't agree on what the source of it is. I think the source of it, to me, is like the media, you know, media images, lack of proper parenting, a lack of information. You know, the same thing. Like, if you, I believe sex education is really important to that.
Well, you know that political vindiction was talking about sex education, and let me scroll back up and exactly what he said. He had a good point here. Hold on, let me scroll up.
Sure.
It's okay. It says nowhere has government sex ed programs have been implemented more, yet you have 70% illegitimacy.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
It says nowhere has government sex ed. He means the United States. Nowhere has government sex education programs have been implemented more, yet you have 70% illegitimacy, and I'm assuming in birth rate.
That can't be true. I mean, first, well, let's assume the number's true. I can't see how 70% of births would be illegitimate. I can't see how that could possibly be true. But let's say it is.
Okay.
Sweden, Norway, like, where's he getting that nugget of information from? I mean, these are.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that it's a little bit of an inflated percentage, but at the same time, I mean, he is making a valid point. We do provide sex education.
No. The point I'm disputing the point I'm disputing is the idea that America gives the most sex education as any other place. I mean, that may have been true in the 70s, but right now, you know, there's education departments that are afraid to give that information to their children, precisely because of like what's happening in Texas and the surrounding states. That states in Bible Belt states have boards of education that, you know, refuse or seriously diminish the sex education programs and either replace them with abstinence education programs or teach them side by side with abstinence education programs. That is not a robust sex education. If anything, it's just a confusing thing for children, you know?
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to leave it at that there for reasons, because I got 4 minutes left and I'm about to get up out of here.
All right. Well, thanks for taking my call. It was fun talking to you.
No problem. No problem, man. You have a good day.
Get you down.
All right.
Peace out.
Later on.
Later.
Well, folks, it's been good. We started off the program talking about the drug problem. I suggested we legalize drugs, have the government cultivate it, dispense it at distribution centers located in dense metropolis areas. Not only would this bring down the price of drugs to the point where it would just completely negate the drug dealer, the drug pushers, the drug smugglers, and the drug lords, I think that it would produce legitimate sums of revenue for our government. I mean, these people are buying it anyway, and on top of which the United States consumes 85% of the world's drugs, and yet we have the most strictest laws on it. And yet we still have more and more people continuing to consume drugs. I mean, we need some way to basically, we need some way to basically rectify this problem. The war on drugs is moot. I read 80% of the people in prison are drug offenders, and I hate the drug dealer more than I hate the drug user. And I think by legalizing this and, you know, using the method that I stipulated previous about having the government cultivate it and dispense it at dense metropolis areas across the United States, not only would you bring down the cost of drugs, not only will you generate revenue off of the sale of those drugs, but you'll be able to keep track of these people. You'll be able to document these people, how many drugs they've taken, how much drugs they've purchased, when was the last time they purchased the drugs, what kind of drugs are they purchasing, so that an employer that is, you know, basically looking in on a potential employee, all they have to do is gain access to this database, and the government could charge $10 an access fee, $10 each time they access the database. You can generate money with that. Because this drug testing garbage is just a fallacy. We've created a whole black market on bypassing drug tests. So this way, you're killing two birds with one stone, and we're going to be generating all this revenue based on all these drugs, and we're going to take out the drug lord. And that's my simple point. I know I'm going against the conservative thought on this, but the war on drugs is not working. It's a logical fallacy. It's a farce. And the only way we're going to get rid of these, drug dealers is if we take the product away from them and not provide a black market. I mean, just read about Prohibition. Read about when they made alcohol illegal, and read about how Al Capone was making about $20-25 million a month in the 20s on bootlegging alcohol. And this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. So I'm just saying, it's never going to happen probably. I mean, there's so much money being invested in law enforcement, prisons, probation officers, and all these idiots that I don't think we'll ever see the drugs turn legal in the way that I had stipulated previous. But just exercise the notion. Just approach it and just say, okay, look, the war on drugs is not working. Let's do something else. Let's just do something else. And that's just my point of view. That's my point of view. And I think that we need to decriminalize marijuana altogether. Because it's a farce. People are going to jail for this garbage, and what for? Anyway, folks, it's been nice. It's been a great show. Thank everybody in here for listening to me. Like I stated, I'm getting great numbers, triple-digit downloads on iPodcast, and triple-digit numbers whenever I'm on the air. Thank all of you. I'm going to be here the same place, same time tomorrow evening, 9 p.m. Central Time. I'll catch you then. God bless you. God bless America. Death to feminism. And I'm out.